Have you ever heard of a fruit so small, green, and ordinary that you could walk past it without a second thought, yet its extract can taste far sweeter than sugar? That fruit is monk fruit. Just a small pinch can sweeten an entire cup of tea, and it can do that without the calories people usually expect from sweetness. That already sounds unusual. But the strangest part is not only how sweet it is how plain it looks, how old its story is, and how recently the wider world began paying attention. So what exactly is monk fruit? Where did it come from? And why does something so modest carry such an outsized sweetness? Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. Before it became a sweetener, it belonged to a place. Monk fruit, also known as Luo Han Guo, did not begin its story in a glossy packet on a supermarket shelf. It belonged first to a landscape. For centuries it grew in the humid, mist-covered mountains of southern China and northern Thailand, in places shaped by steep slopes, warm air, climbing vines, and the quiet routines of rural life. In that setting, monk fruit was not an abstract ingredient. It was part of a living environment, tied to climate, terrain, and local habits of use. Its English name is linked to the Buddhist monks said to have cultivated it around the 13th century. That detail matters, but not because it gives the fruit a romantic legend. It matters because it reminds us that monk fruit entered human life through attention and practice long before it entered modern commerce. It was grown, dried, and used within a much older rhythm of care. Before people saw it as a sweetener, they knew it as something else, a fruit with a place, a purpose, and a quiet familiarity. Why such a small fruit tastes so much bigger than it looks? So what makes monk fruit so intensely sweet? The answer lies in compounds called mogrosides. These are what give the fruit its remarkable sweetness. Table sugar, the kind most people know best, is mainly tied to glucose and fructose. Monk fruit follows a different path. Its sweetness comes from these naturally occurring compounds, which can make the extract around 150 to 250 times sweeter than ordinary sugar. That is where the real surprise begins. The sweetness still feels recognizable. Your mouth reads it as sweet in the same broad way. But the chemistry behind that experience is not the same as the chemistry of table sugar. Monk fruit quietly reveals something people rarely stop to question. Sweetness and sugar are not exactly identical ideas. What we often treat as one thing can, in fact, come from very different sources. And that difference helps explain why monk fruit matters now. If it were only an interesting fruit with unusual chemistry, its story might have stayed small. But modern life gave that sweetness a new kind of value. How an old remedy became suddenly modern. For generations, monk fruit was not used as a trendy ingredient. It was often dried, broken apart, and steeped into teas. People valued it not as a dessert, but as something soothing. It was associated with easing sore throats, cooling the body, and offering relief during fever or minor inflammation. In that older world, sweetness was present, but it was folded into comfort, healing, and everyday practice. What changed was not the fruit itself. What changed was the problem around it. As modern diets became saturated with sugar, calories, processed foods, and constant concern about blood glucose, people began looking for sweetness that seemed to ask for less in return. That is when monk fruit started to look newly relevant. It appealed to people trying to cut back on sugar, people following low-carb or keto diets, and people who simply wanted a different way to sweeten food and drink. That is also why monk fruit feels so current without actually being new. It did not suddenly become important because someone invented it. It became important because the modern world began reading it differently. A fruit once tied to mountain teas and traditional remedies now shows up in soft drinks, yogurt, protein bars, sauces, and even ice cream. The fruit stayed old, the need around it changed. How a fragile fruit becomes something shelf-ready. Monk fruit may sound powerful, but the fruit itself is delicate. It is small, round, green, and highly perishable, which is one reason it is rarely eaten fresh. Once harvested, it has to be dried fairly quickly. That first step already tells you something important. To survive outside the place where it grows, monk fruit has to be transformed. From there, the process becomes less about preserving the fruit exactly as it is, and more about drawing out the part people want most. Traditionally, the fruit is crushed or broken open and steeped in hot water, so its sweet compounds can be released. The liquid is then filtered, and enzymes may be used to remove unwanted sugars. What remains can be concentrated into a powder or liquid sweetener that is easier to measure, package, ship, and use. This is one of the most interesting shifts in the whole story. What many people consume today is not really monk fruit in the ordinary sense of eating a fruit. It is sweetness separated from the fruit and refined into a stable modern form. A mountain-grown fruit has to be translated before it can sit inside a drink can, a yogurt cup, or a sweetener packet. Sweetness alone is not the whole experience. So what does monk fruit actually taste like? Most people describe it as clean, pleasant, and easier to like than many other sugar substitutes. It is often seen as less bitter than stevia, and it usually lacks the sharp chemical edge some people notice in artificial sweeteners. That helps explain why it has gained such a friendly reputation. Even so, monk fruit is not identical to sugar. Some people notice a faint, fruity, or herbal aftertaste, especially in more concentrated forms. And the difference becomes even clearer in cooking. Monk fruit works well in tea, coffee, and other drinks where sweetness is the main job. But baking reveals the limit of treating sweetness as if it were the whole story. Sugar does more than make things sweet. It adds bulk, supports texture, helps food brown, and allows caramelization. Monk fruit can imitate sugar's taste more easily than it can imitate sugar's behavior. That is why many monk fruit products are blended with erythritol or similar ingredients. They are not trying to recreate sweetness alone. They are trying to recreate what sugar physically does. Why people trying to cut sugar keep noticing monk fruit. This is also where monk fruit starts to make practical sense. It offers sweetness with little to no calories, and it does not affect blood sugar in the same way table sugar does. For people trying to reduce sugar without giving up sweetness altogether, that combination is hard to ignore. That appeal grows even stronger because monk fruit is usually framed as a natural sweetener rather than an artificial one. In a market crowded with names like aspartame and saccharin, that distinction matters to many people, whether for health reasons or simply for peace of mind. Studies have not shown harmful side effects in the way people often worry about with newer or more synthetic-sounding alternatives, and monk fruit has been recognized by the FDA as generally safe since 2010. Still, the most useful way to understand this part of the story is not to treat monk fruit as a miracle health food. The real point is simpler. In a time when people are uneasy about sugar, a sweetener that feels both effective and familiar is bound to attract attention. Monk fruit became visible because modern life gave people a reason to look for it. Not all monk fruit is the same. But this is also where the story needs a little caution. Not every monk fruit product on the shelf is the same thing. Many sweeteners sold under the monk fruit name are blended with dextrose, maltodextrin, erythritol, or other fillers. Some of those ingredients add calories or behave differently in the body, which means the label can sound cleaner than the product really is. That is why the small practical takeaway matters. If someone is buying monk fruit, the label deserves a closer look. The purer the extract, the closer the product is to the logic people imagine when they hear the name. Without that check, the story can get simplified into something more reassuring than accurate. And there are limits beyond the label. Monk fruit is more expensive than ordinary sugar, its supply is relatively small, and most of it is still grown in China. That makes it useful but unlikely to replace sugar on a global scale. It works best as a supporting tool, not as a total solution. Useful is not the same as magical. That may be the healthiest way to think about monk fruit overall. Replacing sugar with monk fruit does not automatically make every sweet food healthy. A dessert remains a dessert, a sweet drink remains a sweet drink. Changing one ingredient can change part of the picture, but it does not rewrite the whole thing. And yet monk fruit is still worth noticing, not because it is perfect and not because it solves sweetness forever, but because it reveals something larger about the modern world. Sometimes an old thing becomes newly important not because it changed, but because our problems changed first. That is what makes monk fruit feel so fitting for a channel like this. It began as a small fruit in humid mountain regions, moved through the slower world of dried teas and traditional remedies, and then returned in a new form to answer a very modern unease. Its story is not just about sweetness, it is about how people learn to look again at things that once seemed too small, too ordinary, or too old to matter. So, have you ever tried monk fruit before? If you have, what do you usually use it for? Let me know in the comments. And if there is another simple ingredient or everyday object you have always noticed but never really questioned, suggest it below. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, where ordinary things turn out to be far more interesting than they first appear.